Okay, well, my audio's looking good, and I'm recording now. You'll probably hear a baby in the background because she just woke up. So hopefully she'll just sit there and eat for a while. She's almost finished that bottle, though. She's hungry. Anyway, I'll just be editing out the sounds of baby complaints, I'm sure. you probably won't hear too much of it because I'm on push to talk. But, well, I guess I'll get started with letting you know about the interview. It's going to be real casual. I'm just going to talk to you about basically whatever you want to talk about. But the main idea is I just get you talking about who you are and the things you've been through in your life so people can sort of get a feel for who you are as a person. Does that make sense?
All right, cool.
All right. So, you are Spookston, and your channel is... It's the same name, right?
That's right. It's same name. I try to keep the same name for everything. I'm actually a little upset because if you look at my Discord profile, it's Spookston for everything, and then for Twitch, it's Spookston War Thunder, because that's the one thing I couldn't grab. So that's a little annoying for me. Like, I like having everything uniform.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I've been using Toshio for ages. So, how did you end up using the name Spookston?
It's kind of an odd story. My friend had this like skeleton art that he made. It was a skeleton wizard that he made out of emojis on Steam that he had on his Steam profile, and I named it Spookston. And then when I was kind of like trying to get back into YouTube, I wanted to like rebrand myself, and I was like, hey, that's like a pretty good name. I think I'll take that, actually.
Interesting. That is really a unique story, and it produced a rather unique name, other than whoever sniped out your Twitch account. But
yeah.
So, in real life, you are a human being. What's your first name? I'm Casey, by the way. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. My name's Alex.
Alex, that's cool. You sound like an Alex.
Yeah, not Alexander, just Alex. That's another point of contention. Some people call me Alexander. I don't like that. It's just Alex. But yeah, it's a nice short name,
All right. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Spookston's channel, he does some really neat War Thunder videos. He focuses a lot on history, and he displays some of the American bias in the game. You have a special love for the Sherman tank. Is that right?
Yeah. I used to have the pretty common opinion that it was mediocre at best, but I saw you're aware of the Chieftain, right?
Yeah, I think I know I've been through the same experience. Carry on.
Yeah, I watched his Myths of American Armor video, and I was like, oh, maybe I should look into this a bit more. And I looked into it, and I was like, oh, this is actually a pretty good tank. And then the more I looked into it, the more I grew to like it, and it sort of became my favorite tank over time. And that sort of plays into what my channel is doing now, which is taking a deeper look at tanks historically instead of just their in-game performance.
I really find that interesting, and that's one of the reasons that I was interested in interviewing you, is because your channel does that exactly, and I think that that's something really neat. But again, these are all things that people can find out just by watching your videos. So let's get a little more into you yourself. How old are you, Alex?
I am 20. I'll be 21 in about a month. About a month and a half, actually.
Wow, your voice is a lot more mature than mine was when I was 20. Or even 21.
Whenever I hear it back, I always sound like a 15-year-old to me.
It's certainly not the case. So it seems to be. I think that everybody's voice in their head sounds deeper because of just the way your actual skull filters the sound. But yeah, you get a lot more of vibration in there. Yeah, I wish I sounded as awesome as I think I sound. but I've listened to my own voice enough to get sort of used to it. So you're almost 21,
Mm-hmm.
and do you have brothers and sisters? Tell me a bit about your family.
I am the youngest of three brothers. My two brothers are both in the military. Well, one is in the military now. My one brother retired from the Marine Corps. The other one's in the Navy, and that's about it. I have a mom and dad. Never really had a really exciting family life, I guess.
That in itself is pretty outstanding, especially in a military family. I was just talking with Shadow, and he's telling me about the insanity between him and his ex-wife, and I was like, wow, are you my dad? Because it was exactly like... Anyway, attempted murder aside, it's really nice to hear about a normal family, so tell me some more.
My dad was a pastor, but now it's weird. He had a degree in psychology and decided to become a pastor as well. Now he is a director of psychology at a federal state prison. And my mom is I don't know, she does like finances for a Christian foster home thing.
Cool. So both of your parents are Christians. That makes me happy. I'm actually a youth pastor myself. So did you grow up going to church? Tell me something about that if you want to.
Yeah, I grew up going to church a lot, but I found out, it's not really my thing. I kind of find my own like belief without the assistance of that, I guess. It's kind of hard to explain.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
like my own personal convictions.
Yeah, and that's the way it has to be.
I'm not really religious, but I'm also not one of those people that's like, actively anti-religious,
That makes sense.
I think, people should just believe what they want to believe as long as it doesn't negatively affect other people.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And again, as a youth pastor, I'll chime in here that you should never believe something just because you feel like it's a good idea, but you should be convinced by your own evidence. That's something definitely. Nobody else can give to you. So I like where you are as far as that, and you're still a young man. You've got a lot of time before you catch up to mom and dad. So speaking of, let's talk about growing up. You were the youngest of three brothers. I was actually the middle of three brothers, so we got a few things in common. Tell me about some of your earliest memories, and then if you feel like just flowing into what school was like, and then moving on from there, go ahead and feel free.
Growing up, I was introduced to the whole history thing very early on. Some of the first games we had on our family computer were Insane Aquarium, some kind of like Magic School Bus game, and an Apache Longbow simulator.
Nice combination.
And I played the Apache Longbow simulator, even though I had no idea what I was doing. And we also had this World War II flight simulator game. I think it was like Jane's or something. But I would like fly P-51s against Me-262s, and I thought that was really cool. That's what kind of got me into the whole history thing. As well as, I live in Ohio, northeastern Ohio, and there is the National Air Force Museum that's down south in Dayton. Used to go there a lot as a kid when I would visit my grandma. And that kind of got things rolling as far as the historical appreciation.
Your story is remarkably similar to a lot of the other War Thunder YouTubers I've talked to. It seems like a lot of the most passionate War Thunder players are people who are interested in the history. So I guess that explains why War Thunder always tries to present that they're a historically relevant game.
It was weird. I was watching your interview with Iron, and I was like, he got to that question. I was like, oh, it's like kind of similar to my story, I guess.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I love to do these things, to see the commonalities and then just to get the flavor of where you grew up. And so you grew up in Ohio. Tell me a little bit about what it's like growing up in Ohio.
Well, it's nice because the city I live in, it's called a micro city, actually. It's about the size of a town, but it has all these like microcosms. It has a downtown that's really nice, areas that are really unique in their own ways, and it's a nice balance between being in a city and being in a rural area. Because like I can go to Columbus and I'll be like, okay, this is too much city for me. It was pretty nice. I don't have too much to complain about besides the weather. Like it's May 21st right now, and I woke up, it was 50 degrees. A couple weeks ago, it was snowing. And right now it smells really bad outside because they're putting the fertilizer in the ground. So.
Oh yeah, I know that smell. I don't live in farmland myself, but I I've visited. So, what kind of fertilizer are they putting down right now?
I have no idea, but it smells bad.
It smells like the natural kind, huh?
Yeah, it's definitely the natural kind.
Anyway. That's all, that hands in the dirt kind of stuff is all pretty interesting. My mom and us boys used to go around and collect llama dung for our fertilizer, and then we would rehydrate it and spread it on the just the plants in the garden. Anyway, what's great is when those barrels sit for a while and there's some left in the bottom and it starts to breed maggots. Good stuff.
Scrumptious.
Good stuff. Yeah, that's about as tasty as War Thunder flight models are. Anyway, so you grew up in Ohio. Mm-hmm. Tell me a bit about school. What kind of student were you, and how was life with the other school students in Ohio?
Well, I was a huge nerd. I was always, in elementary school at least, I was always that like try-hard kid. But I was never a part of like the like the debate team or anything like that, because I hate extracurricular activities.
That sounds familiar.
But, I like to read a lot, and then towards middle school and high school, it kind of mellowed out a little bit. I was mostly like a B student. I got some A's, some B's, and like 1 or 2 C's. Usually in math. I don't like math very much. But I really like science and writing. And I guess that kind of also makes sense as to why I do what I do, because that kind of mixes those a little bit.
Yeah, you're right. That again, that sounds really familiar. It makes me nostalgic for my old school days, and then I remember how much I kind of just hated how people were in school. Like,
yeah,
it seems like people aren't too bad individually unless their life is really, really, just horrible and they're pushing that out onto other people. But it also seems like some of the small groups in especially junior high and also high school to a certain extent would get kind of nasty and just kind of find someone to pick on, and that would often be the loners like you and me.
Yeah. I didn't get too much of that, I guess. There was this one instance where I think it was my junior year. I did a group project, and then before we presented, someone retroactively went back and like edited my slides so it said racist stuff on it when I presented. Wow. Yeah,
sounds like you were getting ready for the internet already.
Yeah, but I found out who it was, and I told I presented to the teacher, and all he got was a lunch detention. Like, okay, cool. But yeah. What's the saying? I miss the clowns, but not the circus. I only have like 3 friends that I made in high school, but they're really good friends of mine. So
I like that. I'm gonna adopt that phrase. I miss the clowns, but not the circus.
I got it from my older brother when he left the Marine Corps.
Ah, yeah, that seems like a good place to pick up a saying like that.
Definitely.
So you're an adult now. You're getting toward 21. Have you thought about joining the service yourself?
I did. I really wanted to join the Air Force, but I have something that prevents me from doing that, and that's a kidney condition called FSGS that I got when I was a freshman in high school. Um, yeah, it kind of sucks. Eventually, it's going to lead to kidney failure, but I try not to think too much about it because like there's nothing I can do about it really. So
Yeah, that's true. I mean, all you can really do is live your best and healthiest life, and that's advice for everybody. I have some things that I have to deal with. I have a back condition that keeps me from going into the service, so that's probably the only reason I didn't join the army. It was definitely a convenient excuse too, because I would not do well under someone else's command. But I like to say that we're all dying. Just
yeah,
everybody's gonna get something. But I like your attitude, and anything can happen. Still,
that's true. I am starting this new medicine that it might help, but it's all up in the air. Try not to pin too much hope on stuff. With the Air Force, I really wanted to go into this job called Space Systems Operator, and I wanted to use that to kind of like catapult a career into NASA possibly, because I really like science, as I said before. But obviously that never worked out, so now I do YouTube videos.
Hey, you know what? I'm glad that you are where you are, because like I said, you're doing something that I don't really see anybody else doing. It's unique and entertaining. So, where do we go from here? Growing up, and did you, after high school, did you go into higher education?
I did not. My plan was to go into the Air Force and then use tuition assistance to put myself through college. And now that that's not happening, I'm kind of I'm weighing my options a bit. I'm thinking about possibly getting an associate's degree or something like that, but I'm not entirely sure what I would get it in. Like I look at those long lists of possible majors, and I'm like, yeah, none of this really interests me.
Well, being what I would call a young man at the ripe old age of, how old am I now? 33, something like that. Let me tell you that it's definitely not unusual for you to have no idea where you're going next, and that's not going to change. I think we're past the days as a society here in America where you sort of sit yourself down at a job and just work it until the day you retire. But at the same time, there's lots of opportunities out there, and you've already demonstrated that you have talent and ability, and something will turn up. So don't get too stressed out about what the future's going to bring, because you'll do well.
Yeah, I know it's what a lot of people do. A lot of people my age do, but I'm trying to, do sort of freelance work, I guess, with YouTube. I'm trying to use that to kind of, launch myself further, possibly write a book. I thought about writing a book about tank fire control systems, because that's something that's like a particular interest of mine. And it's a really niche book, but why not?
Exactly. I'd read it. Well, I mean, I might skim it.
Yeah. That's what I do with a lot of my the books that I get.
You'll have some fans of a certain vehicle or nation reading through your book to look for why that mechanic should be put into their favorite war game. You could be that guy.
Yeah. Like, why should the T-54 get a Sherman-like stabilizer sometimes?
There you go.
I wonder if they would add something like that. I feel like it's probably a little too late in the development cycle for the T-54, but, never know.
We have rubber banding planes on airfields now. Anything's possible in War Thunder. they put the emergency roll landing gear technology in the ME-262. We could have anything.
Yeah, I hit a hind with a toe and it only damaged the tail, and he survived. So that's my most recent embittering gameplay moment.
It's moments like that in War Thunder that at first they're kind of like, they make you mad, but eventually you'll be able to look back and laugh.
Yeah.
So with that, you're sort of in a place in your life where you've graduated from high school. You have solid abilities, and you'll do well wherever you end up going. You're doing freelance individual type stuff now, which I really think is one of those things that YouTube has really made available to people. And honestly, I think that's the future of media, is self-start kind of stuff. At least from my perspective, I think it's worth a whole lot more than the mass media that's just kind of sweet trash. But anyway,
I think that's generally the way that media is going. You know, I stopped watching TV a while ago. My parents, they stopped using cable. They've started using YouTube TV now. And like I'll walk downstairs sometimes and I'll see them watching, you know, like a stream from an animal hospital or something instead of, you know, Fox News.
You've been through high school. You're a young man. What are you willing to divulge? And it's okay to keep your cards close to your chest, but tell me about the love life. Girlfriend, boyfriend, I mean, anything could happen these days.
I do have a boyfriend. We have been dating for, what, a year and like 4 months now?
Do tell.
It's a long distance. He lives in Minnesota. We actually met him through my original Discord. But there's not much more to say about that.
Well, that in itself is saying a decent amount. You're definitely not alone. Sorry if I seem a little bit awkward.
No, you're fine, man.
Obviously. Well, anyway, it's just I grew up in a small area, and just being open about having a boyfriend as a man would be enough to get you, well, it's not something that people would be free to do back when I was going to high school. So it's like, it's just a totally different world for me. Yeah,
trust me. Like, the area I live in, it's a lot of the same. But, you know, like I said, it's kind of a mix of rural and urban. So it's kind of like, you know, a clash between old world and new world ideas. So, you know, some days if I said that, it might get me shot. Some days it might not, you know. It's progress.
Well, and I think that's people, too. I also noticed that you have the furry profile picture, and I've seen some of your other art that you have by... You've mentioned who does your art, but this would be a good time to mention it as well, and just let me say that I like the look of it.
Thank you. This one's new. I decided to kind of change things up a little bit. I actually get my art from a variety of artists. This one is from someone on Twitter called Sour Eggnog. The link to their profile is in my Twitter description. Before, it was from someone called like Poi Wolfie, I think. But it's interesting that you would bring that up because it's sort of a debate that I've been having recently. Is that I have this character that I use to represent myself and like kind of brand my channel, but I wouldn't really consider myself a furry, if that makes sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I had an interview with Dita, and he basically just did it to spite the people that didn't like the Animu girl. But tell me more about that.
Basically, I kind of fit the definition a lot of people have for a furry, which is I have this animal character that I use to represent myself, but I don't really, there's a lot more to the community than that. I don't, go to conventions. I don't like role play. I don't want a fursuit or anything like that. I'm actually terrified of fursuits. Like, I don't know if it's like related to that clown phobia thing, but I have this like intense fear of them, and it's kind of ironic.
Well, as someone who has been Smokey the Bear, I can tell you that there are reasons to fear the fursuit. Those things are disgusting.
Yeah.
Just being in one makes you sweat so much, and if they're not regularly cleaned, or if any kind of intense physical activity is engaged in, and I'm talking, of course, about walking down the hallways of a convention, then there's the sweat and the body ooze. Just it's gross, man. It's like a Morgan there, but
Yeah,
I mean,
I can
being
imagine.
Smokey Bear is still pretty fun.
For me, it's like they have those ones that have like the concave eyes that follow you. Like they use that illusion to like so that the eyes follow you whenever you go, and that is probably the most terrifying thing I've ever seen in my life.
No, that's completely valid. In fact, there's this Disney understands this principle. If you look at the mascot suits and the anthropomorphic suits in Disneyland, they always have a way of covering their eyes or making it look like they're looking away, or just ways that if they tilt the head, it seems like they're giving a different expression, because that mono expression, dead stare, it just innately creeps people out, because I think it makes them feel like they're being targeted. You know, like if a wolf is looking at you just intently, they're about to bite, aren't they? They're waiting for a sign of weakness.
I never knew that about the Disney costumes.
Yeah, I can't remember where I heard that, but I think it was in... I can't remember. I've looked up so much stuff. In fact, I just watched I don't know if you're familiar with something Knudsen, but he does the Down the Rabbit Hole series, and he did.
I love that guy.
Yeah, he did a really interesting video on furries, and he talked about a lot about what you're talking about, how it's an extremely diverse community, that the real popularity of it started from basically raunchy comics that used animals. So it's always been, a hive of scum and villainy, if you want it to be, or just a lighthearted place where people don't take themselves too seriously. So there's already a huge spectrum, but it's always been, what is the word? Outside of the main social circle, but a refuge for people that feel that way. And that's one of the reasons it's always been interesting to me as well. I watched that video like 3 times in a row. Anyway, that's just neat that I happened to watch that right before interviewing you. Seems like there's an order to the universe.
Yeah, there's a select few YouTube channels I watch anymore, and they're usually sort of like documentary style content, like Frederick Knudsen, if I'm getting his name right, or Binging with Babish, or people like that. And that's kind of the direction I want to take my channel a little bit. I don't know if you knew about the Armored Legacy thing I've been teasing a little bit.
No, tell me more about that.
Well, it's this idea that I had shortly after the initial success of my Historically Accurate series. I saw, like, originally it was going to be a one-off video. It was going to be a one-off with the Panther, because it was an idea for a funny video that I had. And then it blew up in popularity, and I thought maybe I could switch to doing more historically oriented content. And in, I think, October, I started writing a script for this thing called Armored Legacy, which was basically a kind of like a self-produced documentary about the development cycle of a tank. And in this case, I've been working on the Sherman since October. And it's like been such a monumental task, because I want everything to be like of my own making, basically. I reached out to a certain internet celebrity that I'm sure it won't be a surprise at all. I'm sure you can probably guess it, but I got sort of an endorsement from him for the video.
Potential history, huh?
Not really, but close. He's worked with Potential History before.
Have you talked with Johnny? He's a cool guy.
I think I've talked with him a little bit on his Discord. I used to be in there. But I also have a friend that I commissioned to do a custom soundtrack for the video. And it's been this whole thing about not just like relaying information from books like I do with Historically Accurate, I've actually gone and like, bought documents from the archives to sort of bring information that people might not have seen before to make about a 20-minute long short documentary about tanks. And the first one's going to be on the Sherman, and it should be coming out sometime this month or next month. I'm not entirely sure.
Wow. That's honestly, as soon as you started describing the project, I wanted to say that with your historically accurate videos, even though they're short and to the point, I got this impression that they were very well crafted, which means lots of time spent on them polishing, which is something that War Thunder seems to lack sometimes. But moving on, and to say that you're working on what could be a 20-minute video, and that it's actually coming together, that is really exciting. I am intensely looking forward to that, and I would wait 4 months in between videos or more if you plan on continuing to make projects like that, because that is taking YouTube to the next level, and it's exciting.
Yeah, I definitely plan for this to be a long-running series. It's taking so long right now because this is the first episode, and I'm kind of like learning as I go along, and I'm waiting for things like contact with internet celebrities, which can be really sporadic, or creating a soundtrack, which also takes a lot of time. Or waiting for historical documents to arrive from the archives, which can take months. So after this, it should be a lot faster. A turnaround time of like a month or two, instead of, God, how many months has it been? Like 9? But yeah, and I'm after I release the first episode for Armored Legacy, I'm going to do not only more historically oriented content, but also more content featuring my voice.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that. That's something that I almost forgot about your channel, is that I don't think I've heard your voice in any of your videos yet.
Yeah, I don't think any videos that I have right now have my voice in them. I used to. I had some videos where I would when I had 1,000 subs, I'd be like, hey, I'm doing a 1,000 sub celebration. Send me questions for a Q&A. And then I ended up deleting those for whatever reason. So yeah, after Armored Legacy, this would be the first time the vast majority of any of my subscribers have heard my voice.
It's an honor to be part of that. That's exciting for me. And again, this is one of the things that's fun about these videos, is I get to take you into a different environment, as it were. And from that jumping point, I've been meaning to ask, you've said some about your plans for the channel, and the Armored Legacy thing is just like, I'm getting hyped. I feel my hype bone tingling right next to my very well-worn, what's it called? Curb Your Expectations nerve that I've developed over the years. But what are your plans for the future for yourself? What do you see in your near future, and are you tempering those things with some of your own curbing of expectations? Why can I not talk today? Tell me about your plans for the future.
Well, right now, personally, I have a pretty nice restaurant job that pays pretty well. I could probably afford my own apartment right now if I wanted to, but I'm just trying to save up money so that I can, use it later to maybe buy a house or something. And as far as the channel goes, I'm hoping that continues to grow as well. And I'm going to vastly diversify the content that I'm making. I'm still going to keep doing War Thunder content. I know that there are some people that still like the cinematics that I used to make, but I'm going to do content on other games as well, possibly even doing things like game reviews. I have a few ideas for that, because sometimes I'll just be playing a game and I'll build a script in my head, but then I never do anything with it because it's just not the content that I make right now. But I feel like once I diversify my channel a little bit, then that's something that I can do, and people will sort of accept it more. One video idea that I had was kind of marrying my love for Halo and my love for tank history a little bit and kind of like taking a look at the design of Halo's Scorpion tank and seeing like how good of a design it actually is.
Oh man, I would watch the heck out of that video. I've had the Halo music going in my head, and I'm like, I just asked myself why, and it's because you use that in some of your historically accurate videos, and that I would love to see speculation on the Scorpion tank. What kind of gun does it appear to have? Inferring the penetration qualities based on what you can destroy with. Oh man. I would love to see that. And it's so cool because it's a video that can be entirely speculation.
Yeah.
And yet also rooted, it's like the game theorist folks do. I'm so glad you decided to make that video. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's interesting. One thing that I thought was really odd about it, I don't want to, talk about it too much, but the gun is apparently a 90 millimeter firing armor-piercing high explosive in 500 years from the future from now. And that struck me as a bit odd, but, when you fire it, it explodes, but it also kills tanks. So they're like, hey, we need something that kills tanks but also explodes. We can use armor-piercing high explosive. And I thought it was a bit odd that they completely forgot that heat exists and is probably a more functional round for that than a round that went out of style shortly after World War II.
Well, maybe muzzle velocity is the key. That would be really cool you could calculate the muzzle velocity of the Scorpion tank. That would be really neat to do. Just counting pixels over time or whatever.
Yeah, I think it'd be something like, what is it? The Japanese heavy tank that has like a subsonic armor-piercing shell. I forget what it's called. I think it's like the Rogo? Yeah, the Rogo.
I feel like there's air quotes around armor-piercing at that point.
It's funny because the Rogo in-game, the armor-piercing shell is more like a high explosive effect than anything. Like, I played it once or twice, and I killed a Panzer IV from 2 kilometers by hitting the track, and the explosion went up through the floor and killed the entire crew.
It's weird stuff like that makes me love the Japanese tanks.
Yeah, it's probably my favorite tank tree after the US.
Okay. So what next? A lot of times I like to hear a story from you guys. So while we were talking, were there any stories from growing up that came to your mind, or you got all the time in the world to think of one if you feel like telling me a story?
I guess there was this one time the Marine Corps has this thing called Fleet Week where they will they'll show up in a city and they'll like reenact a naval invasion, and like they'll bring their equipment out and you can see it and walk around in it. And
awesome.
I think I was around 14, maybe 13 when we went to Fleet Week in Cleveland. I got to crawl up on an Abrams tank. And that was like a seminal moment for me because I've always really liked the Abrams. I'm sure that's pretty obvious. When I was in 4th grade, we had to do a project on something. I don't remember what the details of the project were, but I ended up doing the Abrams, and I made a Lego recreation of one. But yeah, I got to climb on an Abrams once. That was pretty cool.
Man, that's all I needed to hear. That is like the coolest thing ever. One of my it's really vague memories for me because this is from when I was pretty dang young, is climbing around on Army vehicles. And I think we also the Army did a similar thing. There was like a mock battle, and they were using like modern equipment. I think they even had some paratroopers. It was just really cool stuff like that. That's like, wow, I want to do that when I'm grown up. And then the hard reality of what it actually takes to serve in the armed services. And the biggest thing I see is a lot of people talk about the danger, but I mean, honestly, driving a truck is probably more dangerous than going to war, but at the same time, you basically give up all of your freedoms.
Yeah, it's a lot of hurry up and wait. You know, it's a lot of, hey, we're supposed to be in formation at 6 o'clock. Okay, the one guy wants to be early, so let's go at 5. Well, the other guy wants to be earlier than that, so he wants to go at 4:30. And then no one shows up until 7.
So you're saying that the actual military is sort of like custom battles in War Thunder?
Something like that, yeah.
Hopefully we go into combat more prepared than... I've been kind of hard on Gaijin, but that's just because I actually kind of love them. But man, World War Mode, the YouTuber Cup tournament, oh yeah, it's the biggest disaster I've seen in a long time of playing War Thunder.
I'm actually a little grateful that they're redoing the Cup because I didn't have the opportunity to participate the first time around, and I might this time. So you might see me in that. I don't know what my schedule looks like for as far as that goes, but you know,
I'd love to see that. And at the same time, I said something bad about the YouTube Cup, so I need to share the good too, and that's that I've planned things before that the first time I plan it, it's just a complete failure, and then that just makes the second time a whole lot better because you know what to do right. Anyway, Alex, that's right. It's been great talking with you. And I've sort of run out of the questions I usually ask. Is there something that you felt like talking about over the course of this conversation, but we didn't really get around to talking about it yet?
I guess how kind of controversial my historically accurate videos can be sometimes.
Do tell.
They make people pretty angry sometimes.
Are you saying that opening your mouth and stating facts on the internet can get backlash?
Yeah.
Do elaborate.
Who knew? Generally when I release one of those videos, the fanboys of the nation that the video is covering always kind of get riled up. Like, I think it's funny that, a lot of people know that my particular interest as far as tank history goes is the United States. And I released the M26 Pershing video, and I get a lot of, I almost swore there, I don't know if we can do that.
Fucking say what you want to say, man.
I got a lot of shit for making the M26 video from people that like US tanks. Now, I'm just kind of like sitting there like, guys, the M26 was objectively not a very good tank. Like I'm not just someone that, just makes fun of tanks for the sake of making fun of tanks. Like, it's to kind of put their performance into perspective. But by far, the worst backlash I've ever had was from the German tank videos, specifically the Panther and the Tiger.
Oh yeah, tell me more about that.
Let me see. I think my Tiger video got something like 1,000 dislikes or something like that. It was pretty insane. But people always grow up hearing one thing, and then they I just lost my sentence there. But they grow up hearing that it's the best thing in the world, and it's like, hey, maybe it wasn't, and then it's like, it gets them all riled up.
Are you trying to tell me that the P-51 did not win the war, that the Tiger was not indestructible, and that some Shermans didn't spontaneously explode? How dare you?
It's crazy, I know. It's like, it's almost like, the Sherman had, an 82% burn rate, and the Panzer IV had an 80%. It's like, the war sucked in general. Who knew?
That's something that I've always heard from anyone who does any kind of history, is that there's a lot of people that have alternate history in their mind, and It really bothers them. It's almost like people have an emotional attachment to facts. And I mean, that's exactly the case. And with that, well, run me through your process. Let's say you hear a fact about a certain tank. What's the process you go through in responding to that and deciding if that's something worth looking into or something that's true? How do you deal with your average everyday tank fact?
Well, generally it's like that litmus test of, you hear it and it's like, does that sound like it could possibly be true? And then if it does, you kind of try and do your own independent research if they don't provide any sources of their own, which, often is the case. They don't like to do that. And then, you kind of parse that out yourself. You see, is it true? Is it somewhat true? Is it completely false? And then kind of base your opinions off of that.
I like the way you put that. And I was trying to get a feel for the actual logic. I think that logic is one of those things that is not taught enough. And it's not something that comes naturally to most people, because you have to set these rules for determining if something is true or if it's likely to be true. If it's false, how false is it? And I like the way you put it.
Like, even with my videos, don't take everything to heart just because I say it, because it could be wrong. Like, I try to use really good sources. I use primary sources if I can. If I can't find any of those, I go to books that generally the authors work from their own respective archives. Like, that's a point of contention. There's a lot of people get upset that I use Thomas Jensen and Hilary Doyle for German tanks a lot, because they have really comprehensive books about them. And they get upset because Thomas Jensen, I believe, is an American, but they work directly from German archive documents. And it's like, you can't just invalidate what someone says based off of their national origin.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And that really goes into, what was it I was going to ask you about? I think just in listening to that last comment, I've lost it entirely.
I think I had something that I was leading up to, and then I got sidetracked with the whole nationalism.
Go back to that thing.
I'm trying. What was I saying? Oh yeah. Don't just take my videos at face value. If you think that something isn't right, do your own research and see if you can come to your own conclusion. And that's another thing, I guess, is a lot of people think that my historically accurate videos are meant to say that one tank should be more powerful or should be less powerful in the game. It's not really about that. It's more about just, presenting historical facts in an interesting way.
That's something I noticed about if the Abrams was historically accurate was your most recent video on that subject, right?
Mm-hmm.
And something I noticed about the Abrams video is, compared with your earlier historically accurate videos, it seemed like there were less times where you said, this is the effect it would have in the game because this is what it did in real life. And it seemed like it was more of saying, this is what it did in real life. And then you could just kind of infer, you could on your own compare it to what it does in the game. And
yeah,
I thought that was interesting, and I wondered if that was deliberate.
Yeah, it was a conscious decision, because I've been seeing that a lot of people kind of interpret my videos incorrectly. They think that, I'm saying that the Abrams should have thermal sights and other tanks shouldn't, when in reality, the T-80U and the Leopard 2 would also really receive thermal sights. I'm not saying that that's something exclusive to the Abrams and that it should get it in-game. I'm saying that, that's something that you should consider when you're thinking about the Abrams as a whole, I guess. Because, if you, the Abrams, when it came out, it was one of the I keep messing up my wording. It was one of, if not the sole tank to have a thermal sight included in its targeting package, and that's not something that a lot of people realize. It is that it was kind of like a hunter-killer tank. It's kind of like a hybrid tank and tank destroyer, but I guess that's true of a lot of MBTs these days.
Yeah, it's just a tank/tank destroyer that had probably the most money thrown into it. But that's what it's
definitely
like to be part of an American procurement program, though. The money just tends to fly, even during... well, we haven't really had peacetime for a long time. We're always fighting somebody.
Yeah.
But that's sort of off topic. There was something that I was going to ask. Oh, right! So here's a nice fun question to sort of wrap things up on. Favorite tank, favorite airplane, even favorite boat in War Thunder?
My favorite tank probably is the M4A376, because that's basically the culmination of all the years of improvement that went into the Sherman and finally made it something that was really unique and just straight up good, I guess.
Makes a lot of sense.
You know, like people wonder why I like the Sherman so much in War Thunder. It's really good if you know how to play it. But anyway, favorite plane. I think for a while it was the what is it called? The XP-38 Grizzly.
Ooh, oh, my friend, you have found a friend today.
Yeah, I really wanted them to add that for a long time, and then they finally did, and I was like, oh my god. My favorite moment with that was I was playing on a Pacific map, and there's not a whole lot you can do with the Grizzly on those. But there was a Zero that landed on a carrier, and I shot it with the main cannon.
Oh yeah,
and it just exploded.
Oh, yeah.
And I haven't really played a lot of boats. I mostly just play tanks now. I know that if you look back, you can actually see that I have a lot more videos where I'm playing air. But I pretty much exclusively play tanks now. But God, what would be my favorite ship? I don't even really have an answer for that one, honestly. I mean, my favorite type of ship would be a submarine, and we don't have those in War Thunder
with
yet,
the infuriating number of hints that Gaijin have been dropping that they want to put submarines in the game, but at the same time, it's like I think they're waiting for something.
Yeah, I guess I'd have to say, this is my answer. Some 5 years in the future, when they add it, would be an Ohio class submarine.
Ooh, good choice. So that makes me wonder, have you watched any of the, what's it called? Silent Waters? What is it? There's some submarine sim that was...
I think it's like
Cold Waters, yes.
Oh, I was right. It is called Cold Waters. Yeah. I think my uncle talked about it, actually. It's funny because he's a lot older than I am, but he also watches stuff like Military History Visualized and plays War Thunder, and might have actually seen one of my videos at some point.
That's another one of the things I really like about this general community is you get people who are your parents, your grandparents' age, mingling with even, some of the kids out there, people who are 9, 10 years old plus, 60, 70 years old plus. I like that we all have a place where we can have something in common and play together.
Yeah, I mean, isn't there this one really old guy that has only one arm and he exclusively plays the B-29? that's really cool to me that, like, you know, you would find something that is accessible to play and that he enjoys so much.
You know, it's things like that that make me glad those let's call them less complex meta aircraft still sort of have a place in the game. I hope they don't keep that guy repair costed out of playing battles.
Yeah, I was gonna say, somewhat accessible except for the repair cost.
Yeah, it's unfortunately it's not just the pilots of B-29s that are sometimes handicapped, but that's a story for another time. Anyway,
yeah, I mean,
what were you saying?
I mean, I've been playing the Bradley a lot recently, and I realized that it has a 7,000 Lion repair cost, when a lot of tanks at that tier have like a 2,000. So that's been painful.
Yeah, that's pretty high for RB, especially for a vehicle as vulnerable as the Bradley. But, I looking from Gaijin's perspective, I think I see why they're doing that. But, well, whatever. Yeah. I'm not a huge fan of balancing by economy, but, well, that's just my perspective as a player. Yeah, I guess there's a reason it exists. Anyway, I'm grateful that you spent this time to talk with me today, and it is about time for me to wrap this up. It seems like every time that I was just about, what's the last thing to ask, and then so many interesting things came up in the last few minutes. I'm glad you stuck around. But
yeah, I can be pretty talkative sometimes.
Yeah, I feel like you're just starting to open up, but well, I gotta do more dad stuff today. And I have like
that's understandable.
I have like 200 hours of video that just is dying slowly, and I want to share everything and turn everything into a video, and most of it just dies. Anyway, that's me. Yeah. You could probably relate.
Yeah, I can definitely relate. I've got a huge folder full of just miscellaneous clips that I have saved up.
And the world.
Gotta do something with it someday.
It just sits there waiting for the amount of polish that'll turn it into a decent video. Yeah. Anyway, Alex, it's been really great talking with you. And for the folks back home, go ahead and say your goodbye.
All right. I'll see you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot, man. And for you guys who are watching, this has been Alex, also known as Spookston, who has this cool furry profile pic to go along with his online persona. So he does historically relevant videos on a channel named after his own character, Spookston. Definitely check that out. It's probably why you're here anyway. And, well, we'll see who else we can get on here next time. Catch you in the next video, guys. Bye-bye.